Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's session titled The Digital Revolution, Graphic Communication, Game Design, VR, to Specialise or Not. And as you've probably seen, it's got a subtitle as well, How to Decide Whether You are Better Suited to a well-established graphics or illustration course, or should you specialise in one of the new rapidly developing digital fields. So they've definitely picked the right trio of people, I think, for this afternoon, because we all represent universities that have been doing forays into digital, and I think we all have these courses as well. We'll introduce ourselves first. My name is Paul Springer. I'm from Falmouth University. To my right, Tim.
Hello, my name is Tim Metcalf, and I'm the Director of Undergraduate Programmes at Winchester School of Art, University of Southampton.
Cheers.
And hi, I'm Joe Duffy, and I'm a Senior Lecturer of Filmmaking at School of Digital Art, SODA, in Manchester Metropolitan University. Thanks.
Great. The plan is to hit on a number of themes that we're going to discuss to start with, about the new employment landscape, the skills that are needed now, certainly for the world of work and the world that you're going into. And as we were discussing before, I think it was the headmaster of the year about 2 years ago that said, if you're starting university this year, in 3 years' time, something in the region of 60 to 70% of those really good jobs that they want graduates for don't quite exist in that form yet. So we're going to talk about the skills and what universities are doing about it, because it's a real challenge for us, especially as we're measured on our graduate outcomes and the destinations our students go to. And we're going to talk a little bit about how higher education prepares you. But then we're going to leave some time for question and answers, so you can think of your questions and put us on the spot and see where we're developing and moving on things. So first of all, in terms of the new employment landscape, it might be worth talking about the types of courses that we're doing. At Falmouth, we certainly have graphic design, we have illustration, we have big, strong courses with very deep histories. We do an awful lot of work. If I talk to the head of graphic design, he'll always say to me, the first year we try and help people find their voice, to deconstruct their approach, to take risks, and to develop it. And that's a method that probably all the courses that we work on would say. We've also been working on some newer digital courses, which are much more to do with learning through doing, where people are learning the technologies, they're learning on the job, but they're also working on live briefs. So we start working on CVs at a very early stage. So we have sort of media production. We have specialisms in film and television, and in game design, game art, and all the different roles in and around that. I know that Manchester Met, you've also been working quite heavily in and around the games themes and some of the different courses that you get on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Joe.
Thanks. So in Manchester, we've just set up, it's the very first year of our School of Digital Arts, SODA, which has just taken its first intake this year in September, with new courses in game art, game design, UX and user experience, web design as well, alongside all traditional courses like filmmaking and photography and animation. But also new courses around future media production, which kind of a sort of a merger between certain types of courses. So yeah, we've got this new facility which is really about sort of new and emergent technologies, along with new MA courses around sort of immersive technologies, sound design, and sort of courses that use traditional subjects but also kind of tie into coding and new developments around technologies as well. So yeah, we've got all these sort of brand new courses that are sort of just straight off the shelf, which are just beginning to develop now, and they're aided by a new foundation course, which is traditionally a foundation course in art and design. In all new school, we've got a foundation which is specifically around digital arts, which is around coding and web development, around sort of working with game art, game design, and a taster of all of these different new courses, basically, which will prepare people to, prepare students to actually then move on to those other new undergraduate courses as well, and have the skill bases and the experience to kind of have the confidence to apply for those. So yeah, I'll just pass you on to Winchester if you want to chat about your courses. Thanks.
Hiya. It's also kind of fairly similar. We have a mixture. Ones related to this would be perhaps like graphic arts, for example, which is an undergrad program. With this, it's structured slightly differently. We have pathways. So the pathways would be graphic design, illustration, motion design, and photography. We have a games design and art program too. Again, probably less focused on kind of deep coding, more so about the kind of the concept of a game. A student will then obviously create a game at the end of that process, but with a great concept, almost like fine art becoming through a games program. And then obviously straightforward, like Winchester's probably known more for fashion and textiles, which we have 2 separate programs, fashion marketing and fine art as well.
Similarly, games is probably a good area to drop anchor on, because we have a games academy and they have 6 different degree courses, and they have some people working on storytelling, the story development, some that more of the techies are doing the coding and the bits. Others are working on characters and design of landscapes. But what they do is they have somebody from each of the 6 courses working in a team. And as they're going through the course, they're writing and publishing games. So their CVs start to rack up, their output starts to work. And if they want, when they graduate, they can often set up as a team as well. We start incubating them in an area we have called Launchpad in the Masters space, where we look to find potential sponsors. We have Amazon, Twitch and others. A lot of universities are doing things like that. I know Unitex at Manchester similarly do a whole number of things, engaging employers. But what we're all finding is where it used to be that we would ask employers what they wanted, they're reaching into us a lot more now because they desperately want the talent pool. And often it's because they don't quite know what they want next and where it's going, but they know a younger generation are very good at intuiting, are very good at knowing how to speak to their own peer groups. And that's the voice, those are the skills that they want. And they're sort of working more closely with us. So you find that a lot of those bigger games companies, in the same with graphics actually, and areas like that have an industry to face and they're interested in taking on grads and interns and placements. They're very, very keen on leaning in and setting projects and working with and nurturing. So you'll find it's not unique necessarily to our 3 universities, but there's a lot more of that happening. I was just writing a list this morning of some of the jobs that come off courses like graphics and illustration, funnily enough. We used to be constantly producing graphic designers to be content creators. Now we're finding people are becoming content curators. They're employed to be information architects, to try and cut out the sheer volume of noise and to start cherry picking and selecting what's going on, because I know people are quite faster and savvier now at editing back information. I'm also finding people from creative writing backgrounds getting jobs. This is a new one on me until I started at Falmouth, but getting jobs as chatbot persona developers. They want those traits when you've got Amazon Echoes and you want sort of personalities to be formed. They want people to start working and the different iterations and ways that can work. And I suppose the common truth between all the areas, and it might be one of the punchlines from today's session, is that if you develop your own voice of storytelling, ways of telling stories, the subject that you pick is going to be your area of expertise, be it illustration, be it visual storytelling, be it graphics where you're distilling images right down to something that's tangible, or be it games where you're learning through the technology, you're learning through doing in that particular way. But your ability to tell a story tends to transcend the actual degree course that you choose. And this is probably the only time in history we would have said this. If you'd been sitting here 2 or 3 years ago, we would have been saying something slightly different. But whenever we talk to the employers, or they talk to us, they always tend to say, well, we want a mix of skills. We want people who are writers, storytellers, can do narratives. We also want people that are coders, drawers, and can do different packages. And often, I still on open days get students coming in saying, well, what package do we need to learn? And we're saying, actually, that's kind of almost the wrong way of looking at it right now. It's the journey. It's not so much the package that you use, because that's going to change throughout your working lifetime. But it's your ability to be able to adapt, tell stories, and move across. I don't know what your experience has been of that so far, because the last 2 or 3 years have really seen a sort of a digital cultural turn.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. I mean, I think I noticed this a couple of years ago. We had a large design agency in Manchester called Code Computer Love, and they consulted the university because they were really struggling with finding graduates who had the skill base, coming from graphic design courses in particular, who had a skill base around particular types of software and coding. And so we've been kind of working with external agencies and different kind of employers to see about the skill bases that our students need, because they've got the creative mindset and they've got the conceptual awareness, but it was also about sort of tooling our students up so they had all of these different skill bases to kind of match what employers were looking for, but also so that they could become those employers themselves as well. And I think we just sort of touched on the fact that Coding and different types of technologies are really essential in order to sort of create these new platforms that are emerging. And just thinking of the fact that we've been sort of touched on things like sort of coding and VR, I suppose, for example, and the fact that we've got all these different avenues now for producing content and creating outputs. And so we're looking through our courses to sort of like develop some of those tools and some of those skill bases, and for students to actually work on a lot more collaborative practices. So already we're kind of seeing courses who maybe 10 years ago wouldn't work together, now are collaborating much more. So we've got games designers who are collaborating with sound designers, collaborating with filmmakers, collaborating with students who maybe used to sort of dealing with code in a sort of different kind of way, and producing really interesting outputs. So there's a much more kind of coherent sort of approach to collaboration with a lot of our projects. So within Manchester we had a unit called Unit X a couple of years ago, where students from, say, photography or fashion, animation, would work together on a shared project. In the first year, they'd all work together. In the second year, then you would choose particular projects. So you might choose a very specific project that was an exhibition or was with an employer. Had a particular remit for a public facing sort of side piece of work. But you would sort of join that project with someone maybe from fine art or fashion or photography. So you would learn to sort of develop skill bases around team working and to incorporate your own kind of creativity, your own conceptualization within a very kind of joint, very collaborative, outward-facing project. Within SODA, the new School of Digital Arts, we've got that component buried in or embedded into every single year group and every single course. So there's that optionality, which again I think is really important within all courses, really, that you have an option to work with people from other courses, because one of the things when you leave university is you're going to be working with people who are from different disciplines anyway. It's no longer the case that you're just going to be stuck in a room or behind a computer. You're going to be talking to people from different countries, talking to people in different kind of time zones, talking to people with very, very different approaches to the same project. So there's much wider kind of creative collaboration going on. And within SODA, we've got an optionality where we've begun to look at how important that is, to embed it at a very early stage. So you've got at least one or two projects every year where you work with people from different disciplines. So you're no longer kind of going in and just being a photographer, and that's all you do. You're working with photography, but you're also very aware about other types of outputs. You're working with filmmakers or working with web designers, and then your content is then lending itself to those sort of different platforms as well. So you're beginning to become aware, much more aware of your employability, and tapping into all the platforms that you're growing up with as well. So I think that's one of the things, is we're sort of trying to keep up with what you guys are doing, basically. And we're playing catch up, so we're learning from you, and I think that's a really good sort of symbiotic relationship, is that we're sort of looking at what younger generations are doing, because we're a bunch of old men basically, so we're sort of trying to keep ahead of that, and we're bringing all those things into education so that it keeps current and that we can kind of keep swimming in the same direction. So do you want to?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really envious of where you're sitting, because you're about to start this journey, and I think where I was when I was a student and going back, it was a bit more linear. I think now it's a lot more kind of multi-leveled, and you've got options, and you can kind of like bond and form and create. I think also with education at the moment, I think it's a combination of being informed by industry, but informing industry as well. Yeah. So it's like a loop. It's like we're learning from industry, but also we're informing them too. So the courses that we create obviously try and connect with that fact. I think the kind of point about the all, I guess the question that we're looking at here is about the all-rounder to the specialist. And like those qualities, I guess for me, the creative process, no matter if we're talking about gaming or graphics or fashion or whatever, is fairly similar. The creative process, that idea of like, you have the idea, the concept, you develop it, you research it, you kind of develop it like down to its final version. And I think maybe the all-rounder approach is quite interesting to start with, because obviously you're breaking down that job into different components. But you might find at that point that there are one or two different areas of that process that are more you, and then you can become the specialist, I think. So I think with that, the idea of, for me personally, looking at the A to Z of a project, the A to Z of a career is really, really important, and all good degree courses will allow you to go down that process. I think when you find the thing, if there is a thing, that you want to do just that thing, that specialist part, that's when you start to drill down and you kind of get that kind of focal, that kind of focused attention. And for me, it's like something that was mentioned earlier, it's the option then to kind of bring in that kind of hybrid elements, like the hybridized elements. So let's say that I might be a graphic designer. I love graphic design. I love typography. Typography is my thing. If I combine typography with, let's say, coding, combine typography with knit, for God's sake, it could be anything these days, right? You start to become the specialist even more so. So I think your portfolios should not be dictated by what industry wants. So you need to get a break out of that at this point and start to mix that up, because the access you're going to have as a university student, and definitely our degrees and beyond that too, is amazing. But you've got to be bold, brave, and embrace that, because that's the way that you'll become a different shape to the rest of the people out there. So when you leave your degree, your portfolio is going to be amazing, because hopefully it's got a unique slant and we see you in that portfolio rather than the straightforward discipline that you're going to go into. So again, that freedom is something that you control. And again, the thing about collaboration, or collaboration with courses or even disciplines within your different degree courses, ask, be bold, be pushy. If you want to know more about making pottery and you're on a graphics course, do it. If you've got the facilities, it's that kind of push that will make you a different shape and very employable. So I think that's the thing that I definitely take away. Yeah. Okay.
Really good point. It's interesting, actually, hearing Tim and Joe talk, that all the universities are pretty much at the same point. Compared to further education, where they're training you immediately for jobs, the next job, higher education, they're training you for professions, for longer careers. And we know that the workplace is changing so much that we're also training you to learn, to grow, and to adapt and change with the things that are coming on stream. And we're in a similar place. We have collaboration modules in the second year, a business one in the third year, which works right across the university. But by the second year of a degree, we know that the students have found the truth of their course, the subject they've chosen to study, and at that point, that's when they can start to question and challenge. And when you're sitting next to a fine artist, an actor, someone from the business school, one of the games designers, and you're working on a core brief, and you're having to kind of argue your corner, that's when all that learning kind of sticks, and you say, well, how much of that do I really believe? That's what the tutors have told me, but do I really believe that? And that's when you start to see which bits of that learning you own, what's part of you growing. And I think, like a lot of universities, we're doing a thing. Wednesday afternoons, we have Wednesday open workshops where we encourage students to go to a completely other part of the campus. So if they're doing graphic design, they can go and study virtual reality. I'm going to compete with an ambulance in a minute. Hey, with virtual reality, or they could do wood turning. They can go and get some presentation coaching. But the idea is you get outside yourself. And what we're getting is that period now where we're getting people coming with a passion to study a particular area. And then we've got their values, the things that they want to be known by, the causes, the ethos that they have. We know, for instance, in Falmouth, we get a lot of people that are very concerned about climate change. We have the foodies. It certainly attracts a particular outlook and ethos. And we find a lot of students, particularly, are very keen on finding careers that match their values, things that really matter to them. And that's what they want to build. And that's just not unique to the students we're getting. We know that's right across an era. And that's part of the challenge we have in making sure that we open doors so you get a chance to exercise those skills, develop things outside the course, and you're not limited by discipline anymore. And that's probably the first time we've been able to say that for about, 30 or 40 years now. So all the universities have stopped having siloed disciplines. They've all started moving and opening doors. And we're getting a lot more development in and around spaces like that. But we also do an awful lot more to support students on that journey, because let's face it, like it is now, if you're doing A-levels, when you're away from home for the first time, especially if you're travelling some distance, it's an insecure place to be. You're learning to cope on your own. You're also learning a discipline. You've been asked to. Everything with the creative industries is about sort of taking risks, getting outside yourself, trying newness. And that can be a scary place. So you find that all universities have got layers of support, be it student mentors, be it within courses, be it support services to help you on that journey, be it people helping to manage the money. They know that it's part of you and your life journey. And they also, I think as Joe rightly says, know that one of the best networks you'll have are those people from different courses who are studying at the same time as you. Because when you graduate and people get a break, they normally want somebody that they already know and have a working relationship with. to latch and work with them. Lots of universities are getting collabs together now where through the Students' Union they're saying, right, I'm an illustrator, I need someone that can write stories, I now need a filmmaker to work with me. And if you get that network in place for you, people that you click with before you graduate, that's a massive, massive asset right now.
Yeah.
You find, it seems to be a pattern. We're going to my left to Joe, and then I don't know if you want to elaborate or any of the iterations you've got.
I was just going to sort of follow on from that. That your network basically is your peer group. And we really encourage students to work with students in, say like if you're a first year, to work with students in the second or the third year, because you're developing your network even more so. You're also putting your ideas into practice and getting more confidence in your skills as well. And again, second year work with third year, first year. So it's all about that sort of collaboration, extending that network, because like I say, your professional platform in like 10 years after you graduate, or even 20 years, is probably going to be still connected with the people that you went to university with, that you worked with, that you really kind of got on with in terms, professionally kind of getting on, sort of like making things together. And I think quite a lot of students, when they do a course, they're kind of doing a lot of external projects as well, like live briefs and work for employers, and setting up projects where they might be making music videos. And again, even though it's well away from their normal practice, they're actually learning skills through that. So again, you're moving away from like a silo mentality through all of those different projects that you take on and the skill bases that they bring as well. And the confidence it brings, and the network it extends also. So I think, you might well go and do, say, like a game art course where you might want to become a character actor, artist rather, or focus more on a specific kind of role. But the chances are that the other sort of skill bases that you've got from your degree will add more to your employability. So as you kind of progress in your career, you've already got other kind of skill bases that you can tap into and develop your career even further rather than be stuck in one role. And I think also we're kind of past the days now where you've got one job forever. Your jobs evolve and your interests evolve. So I'd say the key thing really is about whatever you're passionate about, find your voice within that, and just move towards a practice that really kind of suits that. And I think a versatile practice with a kind of core component is really kind of, where what we put a lot of focus on that is that core element, but with versatility around it to kind of give you flexibility and to be able to adapt to different environments as well. So Tim, do you want to mention anything?
Thank you. So kind of related to that, I think also is, again, you sitting here now, you've got kind of an idea of what direction you want to take, and you're looking at different courses, which is great. And I think with that, sometimes the decisions are made possibly by the grades you might have received on your current course, or you've got really positive feedback in a certain area. But I do say also, get outside your comfort zone, look around, trip over good ideas, bad ideas. And also I think your first year is the chance to not make mistakes and fail, but make mistakes and learn from those things. Because what you're going to learn in that first year will allow you to build in your second year and build in your third year, because you might not even know what you're good at sitting here now at the moment. And I think the only way you're going to find that is to get outside of what you think you are, because you've got a good direction and that's really brilliant, but yet be bold, be brave, and look across the fence, look over the fence next door, different pathways, different courses, different things, embrace that thing to make. I don't use the word mistakes, it sounds like a negative, but to readjust, maybe we could say, because that way you might discover a whole different route that you don't even know who you are, that person right now. And I think that's being bold, being brave is definitely important, I think, in where you are now. Definitely. Okay. We've got a few minutes left.
Right, okay. We're going to put it out to questions very shortly. But I guess a lot of you will probably be thinking about illustration or graphics, but also where as well. And there is different approaches, and you might characterize it differently. With areas like graphic design, there has been a long history of industries sort of leading into universities, a bit like advertising, creative advertising degree courses, where they take on creative and art direction teams and copywriters. There's often been a structure and industry to go into where illustration has often been more of a portfolio culture, where you find, first of all, you find out which version of illustration you want to specialise in. Is it print, is it editorial, is it more artisan? And what all the universities are thinking about as well is, how do you make a living? How do you make money from those skills? What's the exchange value? Are you happy to be working from home with an agent? Are you the sort of person that wants to work in a team? Are you the sort of person that wants to be in a collective to know where the next penny is coming from? There's so many different versions of graphics and illustration. And in terms of picking the university, it's well worth looking at the alumni track record, but it's also just worth, I think, certainly post-lockdown, paying them a visit to see which place feels right for you. Because you'll find they've all got sort of similar structures at the moment. They're all looking to help you sort of experiment, take risks, try new things out in year one. There'll be lots of industry orientation in year two. And that's when they're starting to get you placements as well. You'll find that most universities like ours, I think it's the same for Winchester and for Manchester Met, will have someone to help try and make sure you get paid placements and internships. But they're also very keen on you developing your CV on that journey too, so that you're telling your story, you're owning your learning. And I think very early on we try and get people out of that kind of school mentality of the master pupil bit, and we want you to be a little bit pushy, a little bit savvy to say, right, I really want to start getting a career towards this direction. You don't even know how to start to go about it. You help me on my journey. That's what I'm paying for. You're getting a lot more of that, and we're encouraging it more because it also helps us to help broker those kind of new arrangements. So there's an awful lot of work in and around different universities from that. And it depends what sort of work-life balance you're wanting to get when you're studying too. Don't be shy and don't be afraid to migrate to things that felt right. I remember years ago doing that with my degree, and it went on a hunch in the end. It turned out to be the right call for me. But it's worth going around and seeing how they do it, and looking at the blend as well. We've all taken lessons from lockdown. At the moment, we're learning that a lot of students quite like one-to-ones online, not necessarily in person. They quite like big lectures in line, and often they're grazing, doing other things, we know at the same time. And all the bits in between, the seminars, the workshops, they like in person, where you talk to all the academic staff, they all want to be on campus, in person, in the studios. So we're getting lots of negotiations going on at the moment. And certainly when I think all our universities have invested so heavily in the kit, the resources and the spaces, we're really keen to get everybody back on campus. So we've been fully back on for a while. But are there any, in terms of making choices and distinctions, and we can all talk about the unique propositions of each of the universities and characterise the sorts of people we tend to attract, but how would you characterise, particularly between illustration and graphic design, how would you kind of describe the differences? I'm putting you right on the spot here,
yeah,
Joe. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think within all sorts of suite of programmes we've had illustration, which has had illustration with animation. So we've had students who maybe wanted to do animation but weren't too sure, and the illustration with animation's kind of moved more towards like experimental animation, I guess. But students have moved more towards print as well, so they've had choice within that. And we created a new programme from the illustration with animation programme, which was more of a standalone animation, a very specific, more digital animation type of programme. But yeah, I think we've had students who, with all programmes with illustration and graphic. I think now with these new programmes, we've got students who maybe would have gone to graphic design, who are moving towards like future media production, so who maybe wanted to deal with more content creation, and maybe were less interested in the design element, but more into content. Have moved over towards different programmes really. But I just wanted to tap onto something before we finish. Just tap onto something that was mentioned about choosing the right degree, and I think you've got to bear in mind that you're going somewhere for 3 years basically. So it's kind of hard to imagine what your third year is going to be like or your second year. And sometimes you can go somewhere and be seduced by the city or seduced by the nightlife. But really just try and visit as many places as you can and really get a sense of what do alumni have done, what kind of external links they've got, what kind of companies have they done projects with on the courses you're looking at, and what kind of facilities have they got. So even if it's facilities on other courses that maybe isn't the course you're choosing, there might be an interest area that you can kind of tap into there. But yeah, I think that the main thing is finding the thing that fits you basically. So I'd say visit, try and talk to students on those courses, whether you join one of the forum sites, student room or wherever, and try and get a sense of what kind of work is that's being created at the moment, and does it fit with the kind of things that you want to do as well. Okay, so Tim.
I'll probably say a couple of things, then we'll take questions, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, exactly that. I completely agree. It's like you've got to hit the road a little bit, and I think now we're out of lockdown. It's amazing. Virtual open days, everyone does that, and they're really, really good, and certainly for reference. But it doesn't kind of compare necessarily with walking around the campus, you know, feeling an atmosphere, talking to humans, talking to course leaders, talking to students more so as well, I think, really. So, yeah, I definitely, that would be the route that I think you start to get that kind of touch and feel for actually what fits you the best.